Well, first things first, Troy, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm all right. Thanks for sitting down and talking with me again.
You're
Um,
very welcome.
where I want to start is, I suppose, and you've always called Auri an entity, and it's not a one-off thing that you did a couple of years ago. But did you imagine making an album again this soon?
No, not really. It wasn't part of our plan. We were scheduled to start it next year, but something happened, something to do with a virus.
Something
So
that
yeah,
dislodged the entire world.
yeah, it was somebody had a really bad cough in China or something, and yeah, so the result of the pandemic is lots of time, lots of cancelled plans. So we all agreed naturally that we would uh, bring the Auri 2 album forward and work on that. We were already working on it anyway, but this accelerated it, the pandemic. And here we are with not long now until it's released, even though it was mixed and finished last October. Because of the pandemic, the record company had a massive queue of work that needed to be released. So we were in a queue to be for a September the 3rd release date. So, yeah, that's what happened.
Well, that's interesting because that means you got to work quite quickly then last year if you finished by October. So you mentioned you already had a number of ideas ready. Where was the music going in that time? Because I can imagine there's all things going on. There was another Nightwish album. So when you were working on ideas for Auri, was your mind at in those moments?
Well, Auri hasn't really left any of us, since the first album. We were so excited and relieved that the thing worked and that we had a really appreciative audience out there, people who really loved the music, that it never really went away. It was always hanging around in the background. Hence, I was at the height of the pandemic, when everything locked down, I found myself more and more wandering in here into my studio and just sketching stuff, getting things down and starting to get excited again about writing. And then I found that the same thing was happening over in Finland with Tuomas and Johanna. They were feeling the same way as me. So yeah, it naturally brought itself out.
And previously, you've talked about the chemistry between yourself, Thomas, and Johanna. So now with the pandemic and all the lockdowns that were occurring everywhere, did that present a challenge to overcome as you were working on this album?
Oh yeah. Well, to a degree, but as I think I said to you before, Robin, the wonderful part of working in Auri is that we can do it remotely, and we can do it remotely with a passion. We don't need to be in the same room when we're creating music, and it actually works really well for us. I know a lot of people like to get into a room and jam, and just play together. It doesn't really work for us in Auri. We like our solitude in creating the music, and then we love to put it together with each other, and we love to present our ideas to each other, because we're also in the enviable position that we're like-minded, 100% like-minded on this. So we, like Johanna, for instance, she really doesn't like to do vocals with anyone in the room at all, and I think that goes back to a history of being produced in studios and having the red light, the green light or red light or whatever you want to be, that syndrome of you've got to deliver now, and we're all watching you deliver, which isn't conducive of a really good first take.
Right.
You can end up wasting a lot of time with that. But so we we haven't changed our modus operandi at all. You know, we have just woke the machine up again, woke Auri up, and carried on as we do.
From your perspective in the songwriting process, then, because you play a plethora of musical instruments, and then there's almost a limitless possibilities that you can kind of get into. So when you are working on a song, is there a method to what ends up in the song, whether you go to a guitar or viola or whatever instrument that you end up using?
Yeah, but first of all, I must congratulate you on your use of the word plethora. I love that word.
It's a good word. It's a good one.
It's a splendid one. And yeah, my plethora of instruments, of which I'm surrounded at this very moment in this room. I just grab whatever inspires me at any time. You know, I'll try lots and lots of different approaches with different instruments that shouldn't really work, I find do, which is always nice. It's a nice surprise. But it's always what the music dictates. That's how I approach everything, really. That's down to whether it needs to be an electric guitar, or whether it needs to be uilleann pipes, or whether it needs to be a string quintet. I'll use whatever needs to be used, and also which will tickle my bandmates as well.
Fair enough. Because, well, one thing, and maybe this is just my perception of the album, but when I listen to it, it's even more ethereal, more, you call it a celestial metal. So it's more in that direction even than the first album, I would say. So how do you kind of shape that sonic landscape that you're operating in? Do you talk amongst the three of you to kind of say, okay, we're moving, or we want to present this kind of sound or this kind of feeling?
That's an interesting question. We don't, again, our working methods don't really fall into that. We really like to excite each other with direction, and we manipulate our directions as well between us. Not for any selfish reasons, but because of what Auri sort of stands for with us. We really don't have ego in it, and we have lots of splendid situations we find ourselves in musically and we're very honest with each other as well. We if there's something we don't like, we tell each other, but it's never in a confrontational way. You know, it's always very it's very open, the way we approach each other's music and each other's songs.
Yeah, I should say it's more about serving the song than it is getting your own solo or something on there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's total anathema to all of us. That we would never want to impose anything. I mean, there are some songs on the album where, we're all very active in each song, but some songs have less input from either of us than others, and that's because we are awake to the music. We're very sensitive to the atmosphere of each piece and how each piece needs to be realized.
Yeah, well, a good example of that, I suppose, is Light and Flood, which is pretty much an instrumental track, and it goes in so many different directions within that song itself. So for you, what was that like to piece all those very interesting sounds and directions within us, or dynamics, I should say, within a song together?
Well, Light and Flood's interesting because it that refers to the point I just made, that we really do serve the music, and there's not that much going on from Tuomas and Johanna, because it's mainly a string quintet with acoustic guitars more than anything. Obviously, it's got huge epic crescendos, and it's got space guitars and all kinds of stuff in it. But how that Light and Flood works, that was inspired by an experience I had locally. I was driving home early one morning, and there was a floodplain this a floodplain's been carved out, but for when the river floods, stop the local villages from flooding, and it was such a beautiful and misty atmospheric morning that I stopped the car and I got out and I walked over this little bridge and stood on a mound that wasn't flooded. And I got the most strange and uncanny feeling that as the mist covered the car and the bridge, I was isolated in this, what looked like a primeval scene. It felt like the beginning of the world. It felt like I'd gone back to, 3 billion years ago. And it was a strange feeling. And the light was odd. There were dragonflies flitting around. It felt like the 21st century had disappeared. So I was immediately inspired by this time, and I went back and started working on it. And that expression, the only way I could try, and it is the truth, was to use a string quintet, I think, and acoustic guitar, without sounding pretentious. That's what it felt like. It felt pastoral, but mysterious and difficult. So I sent out a demo of it using synth strings and synth pianos and all kinds of stuff out to Finland. And this is it. This is the thing about Auri, is I said, just feel what you think, and do whatever you think with this. And the pair of them did quite a bit of work on it. But when it came down to the actual mix, both of them were unanimous in saying that nothing needed to be added to it, that it was effectively the demo that was sent out to them. So Tuomas added a little bit of piano to it. Johanna did some, just such beautiful wordless vocals, which were the icing on the top of the piece. But the piece was actually finished before it hit Finland, and my fabulous friends just enhanced it and turned it into something even more exquisite than I imagined. So that's an example of how Auri works, in that if nothing's needed, if the piece sounds completed, then we don't touch it. And there were other examples. There are some things like the Valley. I hardly had any creative input into that one, because it was the demo was so complete. All I had to do to it was add my flavors. I stuck some atmospheric electric guitars, lots of acoustic guitars, and some uilleann pipes on it. But the piece was so complete and perfect as far as North Yorkshire's concerned that it kind of was what it was. And then some pieces require massive input from all three of us from day one, from the earliest demos. So there are other songs on there that are absolutely a fusion of Finland and North Yorkshire, more than others.
Yeah, well, what I find interesting then is you mentioned earlier on that you were quite relieved that it was received well, the first album. So did that allow you, in terms of what you just mentioned, to delve into it even further? Because one thing I find is the vocals fit so well with the music. The voice fits so well within the bed of music that it lays in. So were you kind of able to delve into that even more in a way, if that makes sense? Take risks even more.
Yeah, it does make perfect sense. Even though we proclaimed at the beginning of Auri that this was purely us doing exactly what we want, it's not being driven by any motives other than to make the music that we wanted to make together, the three of us. The relative success of it and the wonderful reaction we got to it from so many people gave us the latitude to go even further down that road of, well, we can do what we like. Hence stuff like Light and Flood and things like The Long Walk and there, we've kind of had confirmation that we can do what we like, and the people who love the music, they want us to do what we like. They don't want us to be bound by expectation.
And in terms of doing what you like, obviously you're a great instrumentalist. What are your ambitions or aspirations as a vocalist? Because there are some bits and pieces, and even in Nightwish, you've sang a bit. So
yeah. Well, I've never had aspiration as a vocalist. It's purely been down to the encouragement of my friends. You know, in Nightwish, all of Nightwish, even before Marco left, it was a direction that we all wanted to go in, and I was seriously encouraged by them to sing more. I think quite a bit of this came from, all of a sudden my bandmates went, "Oh, actually, he can sing." He can actually sing. I think we did me and Marco did an acoustic set on a boat. We did a Nightwish. We did a cruise up some kind of Baltic cruise or something. And me and Marco did an acoustic set, and I was singing quite a lot. I mean, I've sang around the campfire a few times up in Ruska, and I found that my bandmates were kind of bits of fans of my voice. Now, I was really reluctant to sing. You know, when you're up against the glory and the stratospheric power of Floor, and you're up against the mighty voice of Marco, you know, it's. I just wanted to stay in the background. But it's been pointed out to me by them and by everybody that my voice, this voice that I've got when I sing, somehow has an effect on the complexion of the music in a positive way. So they've convinced me now that I can actually sing. So hence I was dragged into singing some of old Marco's parts, you know, howling, you know, full voice, which is really, because I've got quite a soft voice, but apparently I can rock. So I've been told. I don't believe that, but they reckon I can. So I'm doing it, and I'm actually, with the encouragement of my friends, I've actually started to enjoy it. I'm actually enjoying singing now, and I really enjoyed singing Fireside Bard on the new album, which is a kind of coda on the album. It's the very last song, and I sang that basso profundo, you know, because the band liked me to sing in a really, really low voice, go right down, right low, really low. They like that. that tickles them. So I sang the whole song in bass register, and it came out really, really well, I think. So, but I like to sing high as well. I just love it all now. I've been convinced.
No, it's very interesting to see that development from you, and then the fact that you enjoy it. That's a very good thing to hear, I think. When it comes to, you mentioned Marco, and there's one question I want to ask about that, and that's nothing to do with him leaving in the sense, but did you, was kind of the whole pandemic and lockdown a sense of reflection for you as well, with about what you've been doing, how you've been living for the past, I don't know, decade? Because I can imagine being in Nightwish is quite the whirlwind.
Yes, to say the least. The thing about the pandemic is that it was it multiplied the opportunities for, you know, dark nights of the soul more than anything. You know, it gave you a lot of time to stare at the ceiling and consider things. But you see, I'm very happy. You know, I've been very happy for most of my life. So it didn't really affect me in a negative way that much, because I always see light every tunnel to me has got light at the end of it. So I'm a very optimistic kind of person. So no, I never, my dark nights of the soul are always full of light, bizarrely, paradoxically, but they are. So
do you know why?
Sorry
for interrupting, but do you know why you have that very optimistic disposition?
I think it's probably because every second of my life I'm aware of the privilege of it. I think it's because I genuinely love this world, and I love this journey. I love this adventure. I can see that it's ephemeral. I can see the ephemeral nature of everything. So I genuinely love every moment of it. No matter how dark or bleak things are, I'm still here, and I can feel the air going into my lungs. I can see you, and I've got all this music around me, and such love and wonderful friends, and a beautiful planet. You know, it's I think that's where it comes from. I think that's where my hopelessly Panglossian view of life comes from.
That's where the way you describe it's interesting, because it could be a description of the music that you make in a way, because that is, especially with Auri, I think it's very, I think I said this the last time I talked to you about Auri, but it's very earthy. It feels very much of something from the earth, and well, you use the word ephemeral. There's something about it that makes it. For instance, when I was listening to Light and Flooded, it's just you kind of dream away a little bit. Do you do that yourself when you create this music? And
you've hit it really. That's what the music is. That's what the music is for all three of us. We're all very of this frame of mind, that we're hugely privileged, and maybe privilege isn't the right word, and luck certainly isn't the word, but to
grateful,
to be
maybe.
conscious. Yeah, grateful. Grateful. There's a philosopher called Roger Scruton, and he was asked in his last days what the meaning of life was, and he said gratitude. And there's a lot of that there, but a lot of people get swept away and lose themselves in the horrors of conditioning and terrible constructed behavior, and I don't want any part of it. But getting back to your part of Auri there, that definitely drives it. That state of mind drives Auri. There's no doubt about it. That's not to say there isn't darkness in Auri, because
sure,
I'd be a clown not to acknowledge the darkness in the world. But I'm a glasses half full kind of guy, and there's more light. There's more light in the world to me than darkness, and people are good, inherently good for me, rather than evil. So it does get reflected in the music, but there is carnage in the music as well, and there is reflection of that. But on the whole, we head into crescendos of loveliness.
And I mean, that's an important distinction to make, because without the darkness, there is no light, and there is no hope, and all that stuff. So yeah. It makes sense what you say. You need that element of it as well. Now with these batch of songs, and I believe, like you said, that this was scheduled for 2022 originally. now everything's been moved up a bit, but you have the album out. But Nightwish is probably starting touring once it's possible in a decent fashion. So where does Auri fit in with all of that? Are you going to try and play these songs live?
Yeah, we most certainly are. But again, because of our diary being shattered by the pandemic, we had to shift everything, and we're still shifting stuff. Stuff's still being moved and cancelled and being reorganized and rescheduled. Everything's moving all the time. We were supposed to be doing something anyway. Things are being moved all the time. So we've had to. We did have a plan to go out and do an Auri tour. I think I mentioned it to you, Robin, last time we met. That the idea was to go out and do castles and cathedrals. That's the plan. Us with big band. And we thought we might get that done next year, but that's not going to happen now. So we're thinking maybe end of 2024, we might go out and do an Auri tour.
What for you is kind of the experience or the difference in experience between playing a big rock show like Nightwish and then doing more of this like set castles and cathedrals, Auri type music that's much more intimate, I would suppose.
Well, yeah, I've got a long memory of playing in dreadful venues, you know, going back to when I was a kid, you know, dressing rooms and playing in cupboards, you know, for no money and all the usual stuff that you do as an apprentice. But no, it's the situation with Nightwish. It's funny how you get used to things, you know. It's funny how you get used to playing in arenas and stuff like that. Because when I first started it was like, good grief, look at what's going on. You know, what is this? What is this? But now I'm really blasé about it all, and that's interesting for me to see that in myself. You know, that. I still love to play small venues, though. I still love to do small clubs and things like that. Not so much these days do I get a chance to do that, but when I do, I enjoy it. I like to see the whites of people's eyes and have that intimacy. And hopefully, we'll have that with Auri. Incidentally, on that, we recently did a warm-up show. Under the pseudonym of Nevsky and the Prospects, a Russian Nightwish tribute band. And we played in Finland, in Oulu, and that was quite intimate for us. And that was about 3,000 people. And that felt like a small club show, which it isn't, but it felt like it. And after it, we all felt like, it was like, oh, that was really, it's nice and intimate. 3,000 people isn't really intimate, but that's what it felt like. So Auri will be a pleasant step back from the giant that is Nightwish, and back to our roots, I suppose. We're looking at doing venues like of 1,000, maybe, if we're lucky, if we have the demand for it, which would be really nice and intimate.
But it's very interesting, as you say, that we as human beings are so adaptable to the situation that we're in. Like you said, after a couple of years of being in Nightwish, it becomes normal almost. Like that's what you expect to see when you go out on stage. So with that in mind, have there been other things in terms of your musicality, creativity that have shifted in a way in the past maybe decade?
Not really. I think the greatest thing of the last decade is the freedom to do exactly what I want musically. Nightwish it might not appear to be as open as it is, but Tuomas writes the songs in Nightwish, but he's very again, he doesn't have any strict rules or anything like that. He's very, very open. You know, he's very open to arrangement, especially, and he gets excited about arrangement as much as I do, and how we can arrange things and how we can move things forward or change the color of things, of music. That's very much a part of the Nightwish writing experience. I think, you know, Tuomas writes the songs and then everybody colours them in. So it's a lovely thing working like that. And with Auri, it's very similar to that, in that it's more in Auri, because we're three close friends, we really can say and do anything. Not that we can't in Nightwish as well, but it's just it's a different beast. I mean, right. Nightwish is 25 years old or something, so it's got its pattern that it has. It's got its basic foundation. It's got its foundations, and though we do move away from them occasionally, sometimes we still tune into the kernel of Nightwish, and that's something I've really loved to do. You know, I've really loved it. I mean, since day one with Nightwish, I felt like I was home. You know, I was in a place that I really wanted to be and was comfortable. Even with some of the turmoil that's gone on, I've always felt like the thing will rumble on and on. Nothing can stop it. And I'm really pleased to say there's a fabulous wind of optimism in the band at the moment. So it's all extremely lovely. And to be able to do all of it, you know, getting back to that, you know, the last decade, being able to do all of these things and with pretty much no quarter to other people's, the outside world and the horrors of social networking and the internet and all of that stuff, we carry on regardless. We're musicians, so it's what we've got to do.
Yeah, the world keeps on turning, right?
It does.
Finally, then, with what you just mentioned, because I remember from our first conversation about Auri and with Tuomas as well, that the fact of working on Auri was also very conducive for new energy to work on Nightwish. So as you mentioned now, there's a sense of optimism within the band, and then spirits are high. Has that been because people have had the opportunity to do something else for a minute because of the pandemic as well?
Maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not sure on that, because I think without the pandemic, we would have been in the same state. I think we would have been in the same position. It's hard to say. It's hard to speak for the other members of the band, but I think it definitely applies to at least a few of us. But again, we when Nightwish wakes up, it's fully awake. You know, it's fully awake, and at the moment it's raring to go. It was glorious to do 2 festivals a few weeks back. It was so good, you know, to be with everybody again, including all the magnificent fans. So it's all everything seems to be in balance, you know, strangely. It shouldn't be, but it is.
Well, that's a testament then to the, again, adaptability of the group of musicians that you are, I suppose, because like you said, it hasn't always been easy, and there has been some turmoil here and there. But the fact that, as you say, we're musicians and we've got to, this is what we do, and we've got to keep doing that to keep your eye on the ball, as they say, that's very, very good to hear that you managed to do that.
Yeah, it's not easy, you know, to maintain that equilibrium in bands.
Right.
Bands can be Well, as you know, I mean, all bands throughout history, you know, there've been some terribly incendiary moments for us, but we managed to ride the storm out because we to quote an old folk song, we take great delight in our own company. You know, we actually love doing this, and when it comes to critical moments, existential moments for the band, we always seem to go, well, why should we stop this? We love it, and there's so many people in the world, so many invisible friends who love it as well, who delight in what we do, and we thought, well, why should we stop when we're all so enthusiastic? And we're riding a kind of creative crest of a wave as well, in that Nightwish is starting to feel like Auri, in that it's limitless as to which path it can go down, without isolating anyone, without isolating fans, without isolating ourselves, but to explore music and explore the direction of music using the so-called vehicle of spirit that is Nightwish is really exciting for the future. And at the moment, there are things afoot, you know, new stuff coming for Nightwish. So that's all nicely, causally put together with Auri as well. Auri and Nightwish, they work in tandem.
Right. Well, very last question then. The title, Those We Don't Speak Of, when did that come into kind of the conception of the band?
Well, you see, we had this idea that we were just going to have, we intend to make about 29 albums over the next 30 years. Something like that. So we thought what we'd do is we'd just have Auri 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and just call them that. But we thought this one needed a subtitle, and it was because of Johanna. That particular song just really hit myself and Tuomas. It's just got such a strange story to it. There's no actual story to it, but your inner story, the inner story that you start to create when you listen to it, it was so powerful that even though it seems to be not a choice for an opener of an album, you wouldn't expect a song like that to open an album. Usually you'd open the album with a bang, but this is such a strange and eerie song. And I love the title, Those We Don't Speak Of. I thought it was just so evocative. So I don't know what it was. We were sat outside one night next to a lake, drinking some fine wine or whatever, as we do. And it was like, oh, let's use that as why don't we put Auri 2, Those We Don't Speak Of? And I can't remember who said it. It was one of us. It doesn't matter. But we all agreed that it would be a splendid opening to the new album. When people see that, it already places the person into a position of mystery, and it really does it. Those we don't speak of, who are they? But of course, I can't tell you who they are because we don't speak of them.
Well, yeah, that's a funny thing, because I wrote next to the song Dreamweaver, kind of, I don't know why, but that kind of maybe because of some of the lyrics, or that it made sense to me. But have you talked to Johanna then why that song or those lyrics came to her?
Yeah, but I'm not telling you.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
No, I don't want to spoil your reaction.
That's totally fair. That's totally fair.
I don't want to spoil your reaction to it, but it's just. I'm really looking forward to people hearing this music, because that from you've heard it from the beginning right up to the end. They are perfectly placed, I think, those two songs, and everything in between is a journey from that to that. It's not conceptual at all. not at all. But there's some kind, as you said at the beginning of this, Robin, there's an atmosphere to it, and it's more even. I think it's even more atmospheric than the first Auri album. I totally agree with that. So I can't wait to hear people's responses to it. I'm looking forward to how it affects people, how they feel about it.
And then my final note then on I definitely recommend people listen to it from the beginning till end, as you said. I think that's
absolutely.
Just turn off your phone and take an hour just to listen to it. That's what I would recommend.
Well, I would recommend people turn off their phones full stop.
Fair enough. Troy, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me.
It's been lovely to speak to you again. And listen, hopefully I'll see you soon as well, physically. Yeah,
hopefully you get to play the Netherlands quite soon again. And because unfortunately our festivals have been cancelled this summer. So we're looking towards next year. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm trying to be hopeful as well.
You've got to be.
All right. All right, Troy, thanks again. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'll see you soon.